Hey guys, how you going? Welcome to Hold the Ball, HTB, and I'm actually joined with an awesome person, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Jim Powers. I've done the commentary for California Rugby League. I'm from Boston, Mass. I'm honored to be here on Hold the Ball.
Awesome, and it's nice having you here. And just quickly, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the rugby league game that we had over the weekend over in California. And just a reminder, who are the two teams that played each other?
Sacramento Immortals and the Los Angeles Mongrel, which are just the best names in sports. That's just, I love it.
Honestly, look, they are. Actually, I follow the NRL heavily, and I tell you what, those two names, probably bar the Warriors, I think they're better than all of them.
I love the whole, mongrel doesn't make a whole lot of, it's not really an American word. People know what it means, but it's not something that you're going to hear used. I know it's an Australian thing. I know that, but it's not so foreign that no one's going to know what it means. Like it's a word we understand, but trust me, there is no other sports team in this country from tiddlywinks to basketball who's calling themselves the Mongrel, especially because if it was an American doing it, would probably be the Mongrels. So that even
Mongrel.
Makes more, yeah. And the fact that they're both, what's the word I'm looking for? They're so unique. It's wild. They're so unique.
Yeah, and I think Mongrel is known in Australia, and I think it's also from the UK as well. The Mongrel, I believe. And the Immortal name, I think, is just, oh man, I think it's pretty awesome, and it's great.
We had a team here back in the day, in the old AMNRL. There was I think they only played like twice though. There was a New England. There used to be two Massachusetts rugby league teams. And Oneida FC, which was a soccer team and a rugby league team. And had a rep team. Yeah, the first soccer team in America. Well, kind of the roots of all football codes, even though we don't use codes here, but you know what I mean. Go back to a team that played on Boston Common called the Oneida Football Club. And they played a sport called the Boston game, which was like, this is in the 1860s. That was like rugby, soccer, and a fist fight, basically. And the monument on Boston Common has a soccer ball on it, but the ball that they used is at the NFL Hall of Fame in Canton. So so when they restarted, somebody in the early 2000s restarted the name, and because they were so involved with both rugby and soccer, they were both things. But there was a representative team from New England called the New England Immortals, which was cool to see somebody bring that name back. I always thought that name was awesome, and I forgot about it. And when they were telling me about this California thing, I was like, "Oh, that's a good name."
Yeah,
that's pretty sick. The logo is sick. The logo is so sick.
It is. I think even generally the teams in the CRL have done a good job, name as well as logos.
Oh,
definitely eye-catching, appealing, and from an outsider, it's great.
It's amazing because it's easier for Americans to understand it if it's, as much as soccer is big here now and people understand things like something FC, you're going to get a lot more traction with a name like the Sacramento Young Tigers or something. And, we don't have I know that's, their logo, it's basically Penrith. I know, but there's not that many people here who know the NRL. So no one's going to notice, that they're borrowing from that. But the fact that they didn't go with anything that's just like, like in Super League with like, Hull FC, that'll fly here in soccer, but that's never going to fly here in any other sport.
No, that's right. Yeah. Well, I guess, we can sort of dive into the game. So as you mentioned before, it was the LA Mongrel, and I believe they were hosting the Sacramento Immortal. And the game turned out to be a win for the LA Mongrel, 24-22. However, there was a lot of things that happened in order for that to obviously conclude. So did you want to sort of start off and I'll follow through, like, as to what sort of happened?
It was a wild. Like, this is going to turn into the like Red Sox Yankees of California Rugby League. Like, this is the Bruins Canadians, Patriots Jets. This is going to be the blood rivalry between this, wow. I mean, I called the earlier games that they did, and those were the Immortal. There is no love lost between those two teams. Like, I think the number one thing that's going to be fascinating is that a bunch of these guys are going to play on the California rep team playing Utah pretty soon. And I'm fascinated. Yep. I am fascinated to see how that team dynamic works, because holy crap, like, just wow. There's it just starts. I mean, in hockey, we say chippy. In ice hockey, we say chippy.
Yeah.
This just started that way. This like just began like, damn, like this, like, okay, like this is, I mean, you would have thought these guys were, you would have thought this was, if you didn't know any better, you would have thought this was like professional sports, and these guys had been playing each other for, this was some ancient rivalry. I mean, that's really amazing to achieve in such a short period of time, in such a new, a new sport, a new league in America. I mean, it was, the back and forth, it was so tight almost the whole time. It ended on that kick. Man, I mean, I think in the beginning, I really thought Los Angeles was gonna blow them out, but not what happened.
Yeah,
that's not what happened.
Yeah,
that's not what I feel like. Sacramento, like, they warm up to it. Like, all the games I've seen them in, they need a couple of minutes to get themselves together, and they're almost better after somebody scores on them. I don't know why. They get better if they're challenged, if there's an uphill, if they have to face some kind of adversity.
Yeah. Look, and I just want to sort of touch on a point that you mentioned as well. You spoke about how they look like they're professional teams, and I think, look, obviously, LA Mongrel won, but I think it's a compliment to both teams that there was actually a close scoring game. It shows that, again, the basic fundamentals, as I keep saying, have been implemented. It wasn't like a one-sided affair. And hey, don't get me wrong, I don't mind that every now and then. But I mean, for a first sort of matchup, this is like the perfect example of something that's been done right, something that's been implemented well, and obviously practiced as well on a regular basis. And I think that was good, and I think that was awesome to watch. And you mentioned on it before as well. It was fiery. It was look from my viewing, it was hard hitting, and hey, there was a few. I think there was a few arguable tackles going on there, but obviously the ref made sure that that they were well.
There was a couple of there was a couple of shots in there. I go, oh, okay, that's all righty. I'm glad. I'm almost glad I wasn't calling that game, because I probably would have said something not suitable for broadcast about 4 or 5 times while I was watching that. It was Saturday night here. I kicked back with a couple of beers, as you should. And wow. I mean, that was honestly, the level of what that was. I mean, I saw the old AMNRL back in 2010. That was my first game, was 2010. And that was light years better than, no offense to the old to the people who were playing back then. But this was, I mean, I don't know whether it's because there were more people involved who have at least some rugby league, at least they have some understanding of rugby league. I mean, I know there's a lot of Polynesians involved. So I think maybe they have like a cultural, it's at least something they understand. But that was, I mean, that was way better than the first 4 or 5, years of the old, league that we had here. And I mean, those guys were trying, there were a lot of Australians, but, on the East Coast, it was mostly British guys and Aussie expats, and as a random Americans who played football. There just seemed to be a lot more rugby like DNA, involved in this California game that you could see. They didn't, they didn't start at 0. Like, they started probably, I mean, they're not going to go out and, beat like the PNG Hunters or anything, but they're, you know, they're at like 60%. Like they're almost full understanding, which is incredible, really. I mean, that's amazing.
It is. Look, these probably only there was sort of like in the second half, I believe, Immortals went over near the try line. I think, well, he planted it, but I think the referee called no try. Yeah. And I just had a little bit of a pause and a bit of a slow-mo, and I think he scored it. But obviously, there's no cameras there. But
yeah, I think once, yeah, I mean, I think once they get, you know, once there's more, that's the real. And I had this whole discussion with them when I started helping them out. You know, that's the biggest. Organizing games and getting games to be played is one thing, and that's a hurdle. I mean, that's here, especially logistically. I mean, Sacramento to Los Angeles, that's almost the entire West Coast. I mean, that's like a 6-hour drive. That's 400 something miles. I mean, that's a hike.
Wow,
that's a long way. I mean, that's almost the same distance from here to Florida. So just getting that game played is that's phenomenal. I mean, that's really amazing. You wouldn't see that in an amateur sport here. You know, people are not going from a recreational amateur sport. People are not going 400 miles. Like that doesn't happen. So that's amazing in and of itself. But the next big mountain to climb is the broadcast side of it. You know, getting it recorded. It was, you know, it was really well done. It was really, I mean, the barometer here for that is like amateur soccer and lower league American soccer in the last like 10 or 12 years has gotten themselves on YouTube. And there's a website called My Kaju, and it went from just someone with a shaky hand cam to now it's like, you know, our third division is pretty much on par with like some professional leagues in other countries. And that's just a learning curve that you have to have. But they're almost like with the players themselves, they're already starting. I mean, that was so good. And yeah, I mean, that guy scored. That guy scored. That was the try. That's the try. But I mean, I guess that's, and I know a lot of the purists in Australia talk about this, like it's kind of like a throwback to, I've only been watching rugby league since 2013. So don't like seriously since 2013.
Understood.
This is just my, I'm a new guy. This is just my, you know, it almost seems like they're I don't know whether they're doing it on purpose or it just reminds them of like the old pre-NRL, like NSWRL, like the Newtown Jets, and it has that old school 70s 80s feel. You know, there's no replays. There's, you know, it's what happened on the park. You know, if you don't like it, tough. And that leads to, you know, and then that's going to lead to some of the discussions that were occurring.
That's right.
Which makes it, you know, in the end, that makes it a better, I mean, eventually, hopefully, you know, 5 years from, you know, a couple years from now, and maybe not even 5, the way they're going, you know, they can have more cameras and get,
they will get it.
But that just adds to the spectacle. I feel like those mistakes, you know, that ends up 5 minutes later, the dude walked up on the guy from the Mongrel comes up, shoves the other guy, just almost shoved him off the field. That was fantastic.
Yeah. I'll touch on two parts. One, you mentioned about, you know, the kilometers or the miles that the players have had to journey to get the game going. And wow. I just want to sort of state how people who are watching, obviously for us, we just see it and it's cool and it's great, but we don't understand the hard work that actually goes behind the scenes, players that actually dedicate their time to actually be part of this movement, this growth, this, you know, this next big thing, as I sort of dub it. Yeah. And we don't really, you know, we don't really pay attention to that, do we?
No, I mean, I feel like because, I mean, I've been to Australia and I know Australia has loves American sports, and you guys probably more so than anybody other than the Canadians who are next door. So it's easier for them understand American sports, but like the size of America is a big, you know, Australia's a big country too, but you don't have as many people. There's more people in California than there are in Australia. There's more people in California than Australia and New Zealand combined. That's a Sacramento to LA that's wild.
Yeah.
That is a huge, that's like 70% drive. You've driven through 70% of the west coast of the country. That's bananas. When I was describing it to people, because I was passing the link out to my friends, like, hey, check this out. This is, I was helping these guys out. Like, watch this. My friends who are big football fans, sports fans in general. I mean, we watch everything. The person I turn this on to the most is an ice hockey guy, and he loves it. He refers to it as like ice hockey on grass. The hits and the because you can fight in ice hockey, you can legally fight. So he loves the biff, man. He loves I loves watching all that old stuff. But when I told them, they're like, wait a minute, these guys drove down from my American friends were like, wow, these guys drove down from Sacramento to play in LA and they're not getting paid. I'm like, no, dude, this is, they just got this started. That's something else that's going to help, grow this thing. Cause people are like, wow, like almost everyone that I showed this to had some variation of, wow, this must be a big deal. I mean, this must be like, that's amazing that people would put in that effort, to try to get this off the ground like that. And the jerseys are really cool. And, that really helps. And you're right. I mean, it's easier, I guess, if you're in Australia where, I mean, not where you are in Australia, where absolutely nobody cares about rugby league. But what was the name of the Adelaide team they tried to start? I'm blanking out.
The Adelaide Rams.
The Rams.
The Rams, they actually did play. They played 97 and 98, I believe. There was a done dusted deal after that. But in saying that, obviously there's still a bit of a push to have him back, I think. So we'll see how that goes. But,
I love the guy who runs the Adelaide Twitter account, man.
Yeah,
who runs the Adelaide Rams Twitter account.
He's awesome.
That dude is fantastic, man. That is
shout out to you, man.
Love
what he does.
That's the shit.
Yep.
But if you're an Australian, it's part of your culture, and like, even if you don't like it, you know it exists. Rugby union here, even though it's existed since 1872. I mean, Harvard had a rugby team in 1872. There are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of teams here, but that's like a tiny little niche thing. It's never made any kind of impact on the American sports culture. So most people here don't even know that there's two kinds. Rugby is basically just, if you say rugby to an American, it's just American football without pads. That's as much as they know. They might have seen a game in college, maybe. They really don't. Most people, there's that episode of Friends where one of the characters plays rugby and gets his butt kicked.
Yeah.
That's like the most rugby exposure, because it wasn't on television for years. The Rugby World Cup was only on pay-per-view right until a few years ago. Now we have a professional league, but and they're doing very well, but that's really, really tiny. So explaining what league is to people, that's a whole, is a whole other thing. So the way that they, to your point, and you're absolutely right. I'm reinforcing your point here. That's what these guys have done in starting this and getting this off the ground like that and making it as professional as it looks is really, really impressive when you explain to Americans, like, okay, so this is a much less, this isn't as played as widely as the rugby that they play at, Harvard or any major U.S. college has a rugby team. It's not like that. This is the north of England. I know they play it everywhere. I'm a rugby league expansionist. I'm not saying that, but I tell people, there's only 2 pro leagues, and that really blew people's minds. Like, how did this end up in California? Like, that's okay, and that that level of interest.
Yes, and I think it's actually perfect. In terms of location, I think it's great there. And look, you've touched on rugby union. Not the biggest fan of it personally, even though I do come from New Zealand. However, I think, and I hope I'm not biased in saying this, but I think rugby league would have more of an appeal to the American casual than rugby union would. That's what I think. What are your thoughts on that? Yay or nay?
Okay, so I like them both. I know it's like heretical to some people, but I like them both. But you're right. I agree with you. The rugby union has tried for a long time. And here we don't have the class. I know about the war. I know about the way rugby union has tried to suppress rugby league all over the place. I know about all that bad. Never happened here. 1, because we didn't even really have rugby league. And 2, because we don't, that's not our sports culture. Like, our sports culture is like all the teams in your region support each other as long as they don't play in the same league. So like, you know, the Bruins and the Celtics and the Revolution and the Red Sox and everybody, you know, everybody's on the same side and they're cheering each other on. So you're not going to get the hatred. But yeah, rugby union is confusing too. It took me a while to you know, the basics are there. Sure, okay, you run, you can only pass backwards, all right. But the penalties that get called, collapsing the ruck, that makes no friggin' sense. I mean, that takes a long time to explain. The line outs, it's like a soccer throw in. What the hell is going on here? Like there's a lot more rules. Whereas rugby league is easy. If you've watched any American football in your life, you can pick up a rugby league game in like 5 minutes. I mean, maybe you're not going to be a master of it, but if you watch, I mean, you can figure out it's not hard. It really is the best.
No.
And that's what drives me crazy about, you know, people that don't think it's going to work here. Like people, like it's so much easier to explain to people than, and it drives me nuts that it's not on like more television here. Like it's hard to, for years, the NRL was shunted off to a channel called Fox Soccer Plus that nobody gets. Super League isn't on TV here. Super League used to be on Fox Soccer Plus. I don't even know what's on Fox Soccer Plus. So that's why it's really, really, really good and important that like California is doing this, like getting on YouTube and you can show people, hey, like this is, you know, check this out, because it is really easy. I mean, if you're an American football fan, it is really super simple. The biggest challenge both rugbies have here and league is going to have here is the knock on fumbling the ball forward is somehow wrong. And that's like antithetical to like us as Americans. Like, what do you mean? The ball can go anywhere. Why does it matter where the ball goes? Like he dropped it and went in front of him. Gives a shit, right? Like that's the biggest hurdle, at one of the biggest hurdles. Like the knock on, and it is going to be a little bit more difficult because both forms of rugby and almost more rugby league, because of rugby league's close DNA to American football. There aren't different parts of the game. So there's not like American football. There's a passing game and a running game. It's obviously not like that. It's passing game. It's running. You throw the ball backwards. So that's in American football, that's a kick return. So it's 80 minutes of what looks like a kick return, which is fine. I mean, we love, that's cool, but that's what you have to explain to people, that there's, there can be different things that happen within that kick return, 80 minutes of kick return. Yeah. Like that's the kicks. I really wish, and you gotta highlight, and I don't know how, I keep thinking about this. You gotta highlight like the kicking, how amazing it is that somebody can pass the ball with their foot and hit a guy. Like, that's like Jonathan Thurston, kicking the ball forward and hitting a dude like Tom Brady with his hand, but he's doing it with his foot. I know he's retired. That 2015 final with Thurston, where he ends it with that's the NRL should just take that 10 minutes, put that on him, pay whatever ESPN wants them to pay, and just run that all day long. Everyone I've shown that to loses their mind. But you're right. To go back to your point, you are absolutely right. Rugby league has so much. It is much easier to understand. It took me probably 5 or 6 years to understand rugby union. I understood rugby league the third game I went to. Like, okay, I got you. Like, sure. Easy, simple.
Yeah, that's
absolutely right.
And just quickly, just to go back to the game as well. So we were sort of going here and there, which is okay. Every now and then we'll go back to the game, but just quickly as well. I think so. Watching as well, we touched on it again, but the forwards I think played a good role. Like they were using the forwards properly. The forwards were marching forward as they do. They were using them in their game plans for both sides, and the backs were well used as well. You know what I mean? Like sometimes some teams sort of just go one way, they just go backs. They don't really use forwards, vice versa. And I think they implemented both forwards and backs very well for both teams.
You're absolutely right, and I think that goes back to the fact that there's enough like rugby league DNA in both teams. People that understood, because that was kind of the thing. Once I watched rugby league more and more and more, I realized, especially watching NRL and Super League, State of Origin, international things like that, I realized that here, when I started going to games here, that wasn't happening. Like the early games that I watched were more like what you were saying. They were only using the backs, so they were only really using the forwards. There wasn't like integrated, because there weren't enough people playing who understood what they were supposed to be. They had a general idea, but they weren't, maybe a coach. I don't want to knock them, but you know what I mean? Like because it was just starting here. Like they were trying, they're doing their best, but it took a while. And now when you go to the last USARL game I went to, 2019, you saw that it's more integrated, but this is starting that way. Like this already, we've skipped what, I mean, the US AMNRL got started in like the early 2000s. So, California's already skipped like 15 years of development in the first game.
Yeah.
Right. It really was. They really did play they weren't relying on, nobody was like a one-trick pony. There's a lot of times you would see the old, like, not the Axemen, but I saw them once. Oneida FC, the original New York Knights, they were like a one-trick pony. There was, they had great backs.
Yeah.
And that was about it. Like that was like what they could do. But this was it was very, very well put together. You could tell they had coached, the coaches knew what they were doing. And I think that's another really important point, is the coaching in this is pretty freaking good for, amateur sports.
Yeah. And I guess just to bring on to that, there's a saying in rugby league: forwards win you the game, backs determined by how much. So I thought I'll just leave it a bit of food for thought there for you.
Oh, that's fit. That's it. I got to remember that one. In American football, we say defense wins championships. That's an American footballism, but I like that. That's even better.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I guess just probably another point as well. What I like about CRL is the players coming from different sports. Obviously, these rugby union, these American. I've seen that some of them have MMA backgrounds. Like, I think it's great that all these different sort of sporting backgrounds are coming together and embracing rugby league.
Yeah, I mean, that's if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be tired of me saying this. Like, there are just so many athletes here that have nowhere to go after college, or if they play in high school. And I mean, we have high schools here. If you're in Texas or you're in California, we'll stay in California because this is the state we're talking about. I mean, they have high school stadiums in California that dwarf professional stadiums in other countries, right?
Yeah.
They have facilities. Yep. They have facilities that dwarf what you have in professional sports in other countries. We have so many athletes, and they're so well trained and in their own individual sports, and they're so athletic. And then, if they can't get into, because only a small amount of them are going to get into college, and then an even smaller amount of those people are going to go pro. So there's just this huge swath of, millions of, probably, if there's 40 million people in California, there's probably 10 million of them who have like high level high school or college, sports, team sport experience, playing in front of like, 10,000 people in a high school game, 20,000 people in a high school game. Of course they could play. Holy, like, somebody, I'm glad. And one of the many reasons I'm glad California Rugby League started is like, this is such an untapped, oil reserve of talent. Yeah. I mean, even if they've never played it, and it goes back to your point that it is so similar to American football. And, if you were a high school running back or a junior college running back or even like a NCAA Division III running back, oh my, you can do this. Like, it's like a drill, basically. Like, there's so many athletes from so many different sports. It's going to be what, 10 or 15 years from now, people are going to be kicking themselves. Like, why didn't we try to do this before? Like, why didn't we send somebody's going to eventually, my hope is that somebody in the NRL, because that's where all the money is. Super League has already decided that they want to, just never leave the M62. I know, it boggles my mind. I don't understand.
Crazy. That's crazy.
It's crazy. Somebody in the NRL, or you know what? I mean, even in the same drive that pushed to bring in PNG, right? Here you have a country where rugby league is the national sport, right? And bring the Hunters, only country in the world where it's the national sport. And to bring the Hunters, the drive and the idea to bring the Hunters into QRL. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yep.
To bring the Hunters into QRL, which is a great idea. That's a great idea. And that's worked really well. Somebody has to have that. There's got to be somebody on some level in Australian rugby league who goes, hey, man, there's 40 million people in California. Like, just California. We don't have to talk about the rest of the country. I mean, we're just going to do California. It's an 18-hour flight. It's not fantastic, but it's getting shorter all the time. Better than it was in the 50s, right? All of these kids, like somebody's in like 4 or 5 years. I'm gonna call it 4 or 5 years. Somebody from California is gonna go. I don't know what level they're gonna play in Australia, but somebody from California is gonna go down to. If not more people are gonna end up playing for money in Australia. I mean, it's gonna happen. And then once that pipeline opens up, and it's just begging, it drives me crazy. As soon as I got into this sport in the early, in the last decade, it's like, holy crap. There's just such a huge wealth of talent here. If somebody could get them to play, and I mean, and it helps again that a lot of these guys are Polynesians, but that's the most of the Polynesian population of this country lives in that part of the world. They live in California, Utah. The highest concentration is in Utah.
Yeah.
Which is I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Utah is and that's even the rugby union team is Polynesian flavored, the Warriors. If you
I've actually got family in both states.
Oh really? Oh, look at that. See, you know this stuff. I mean, even if you just focused on that, and I don't think you should, but even if you just focused on American Polynesians, even if you just focused on our Polynesian population, there's gotta be just a metric ton of untapped talent. And you add that in with all of the people who played, like you're saying, MMA. I mean, you don't play MMA, but nobody, it's the old George Foreman joke. Nobody plays boxing. You play basketball. You don't play boxing.
Yeah.
The MMA guys, there's just a lot of, fit people. There's just a lot of athletic, that part of the country, the weather's really nice. I mean, out here in New England, it snows like 7 months of the year. So that's why we play ice hockey. But there's so much athletic talent just on the West Coast that these guys are going to be able to tap into. And the more this, steamrolls and connections like this, like you have, you live there, but you have family here. The more that the people in Australia and New Zealand and Samoa and Tonga and all these countries talk to their families here and be like, hey man, like you can play rugby league. You can go to California. You're already in California. Why don't you try this out? Because they're all over the state. Once that starts getting rolling, I mean, that's going to be just a gold mine. I mean, it's going to be unbelievable.
So, so I've just seen the time. I'm probably going to be in the wrap it up stage, just so I can get ready for work.
I appreciate your time, buddy.
No. I know it's recording, but we can still, sort of edit it and stuff and go from there. Maybe we can sort of just touch on our final thoughts of the game and then sort of wrap it up nicely and then just go from there.
All right, man. Sounds like a plan.
Sweet. Did you want to kick us off, so to speak?
Like I said, this rivalry is going to be the biggest. I mean, unless something else happens, this already has all the hallmarks of an amazing rivalry. I mean, it's incredible that it started at this level of animosity. Like these guys do not like each other. Like these guys are not cool with each other at all, which is awesome. It makes it makes sports even better. And it was such a feisty, fiery, well-played game. It's such a great advertisement for California Rugby League. And everyone I've shown this to, 20, 25 people, very few of whom have ever seen even rugby union, all had the same, like, oh, I'll watch a few minutes. And then one of my friends called me back and he's like, man, I watched this like 3 times. This is nuts. Like this, where does this happen? Like, is this on TV? Like, what's going on? I was like, I'm telling you, man, like that's this was that it was really tight. And you're right. If it was a blowout, it was a blowout. Like, that's fine. No big deal. But the fact that it was tight, that makes it even better.
LA 24, Sacramento 22 in a very tough game.
Yeah.
And look, LA Mongrels, you guys did the job at the end. At the end of the day, unfortunately, there can only be one winner. And rugby league is one of those sports. And
rugby league is the winner.
Good work there. And yeah, that's right. Rugby league is the winner.
Rugby league is the winner.
There's one thing I will probably just say. What I did notice, though, is the toughness from the players, I think, can match it with the rest of them. Obviously, the skill is a different thing, but I think the toughness, the physicality, the absolute, I'll run into you no matter who you are.
Yeah.
I think they'll match it with the best of them.
Yeah.
And obviously the skill will develop, so on and so forth, and then they'll be able to get there. But in terms of toughness, you guys have it. We don't need to look anywhere else. CRL have it. They've got the toughness, physicality, that I'll just give it my all. They've got it. So
yeah,
in terms of that, they can match it with the best of them.
You're already
good
starting.
To see. Yeah.
No, yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, man. No, you're right.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, I thought, dude, you need to go into like PR or something, man. Like, I'm jacked up, like listening to you talk. Like, I want to go tackle somebody. Like, this is you're getting me all jacked up. Like, that's right. Let's go. Like, that's awesome. Yeah, but that's the thing. You're right. What we have is a lot of rough diamonds. So they're already really tough. They're already really driven. They're already really motivated. They just have to learn, because running with a football, American football is a possession-based game. And you don't lateral it. You don't do that unless you absolutely have to. You only see that in end of the game, last second. This is your last shot attempt to win a game. So you hold on to it. You never pass it. And because you have the helmet on, it's hard. You have to turn your whole head to throw the ball. And when they learn that, that's going to be the big transition for American football players playing rugby league is to be more comfortable with lateraling it. Well, we say lateral, you just say, offloading.
That's right.
An offload.
Yeah, gotcha.
They don't have to turn their whole head because, if you look at a helmet, you can't really see. Your peripheral vision is not fantastic. So, and running with the ball is different because there's no high tackle rule in American football. You can hit the guy wherever you want, basically, as long as you're not leading with your head. And you could lead with your head right up until about 20 years ago. So running with the ball is completely different in American football as opposed to rugby league. So those are going to be the two big skill areas that crossover athletes here are going to have to learn. But you're right. Like the core, the drive, the determination, the physicality, the toughness, like getting hit, got that all right. We got that down. Like not me personally, because I would die. But these guys, they've already got it. Like it's already in there. We just need to, hopefully in the future, like California can. What I'm hoping is that the teams in Australia, probably not NRL teams, but maybe New South Wales teams, the Newtown Jets and those guys, the West Magpies, things like that.
Yeah,
would partner with a California team. And maybe bring over coaches or maybe go the other way or something like that to hone that. You do that a couple of times and then, that'll really hone the skills.
Yeah, no, that's it. And again, just to point out, I don't think people understand, that this is the next boom in rugby league. I personally believe it. If done right, if planted carefully, CRL is going to be the next big thing in terms of rugby league, and I firmly believe it, and I'm backing it, and I cannot wait.
I'm right there with you, man. I mean, there's just so much. The first game of this sport I ever saw, I could not believe that no one had ever tried to make it a big deal here before, or a bigger deal. Like, it's.
No, I agree.
It's so easy to understand. It's so similar to American football, especially at not the NFL game. The NFL game is much more regimented and there's a lot more. The high school football is a lot more free flowing, and in high school football you still have players who play both what we say both ways. So there's not So it's more like rugby league where there's not, different units coming on and off the field. Oh man, it's like you're right. Like this is it. Like now that these guys have got it going, like once you start getting high school kids in Sacramento, high school kids in East Palo Alto, high school kids in LA coming out and seeing this, being like, well, your odds of playing at USC probably not great. Like, maybe some of you will, but the majority of you aren't. But if you still want to play football, something like football, you can do this, and then you can go play. There's a pathway here to represent America, represent California. And that's big. I'm really stoked about the California-Utah thing because we don't really have the colleges are the state representatives. Like our state of origin is like college football. Like that's University of Southern California. Here we have the University of Massachusetts, Iowa, University of Alabama. That's our state of origin, right? But we don't have a non-college related thing like that. So to give these kids the opportunity to represent California versus Utah, that's something nobody else can do. That's a point of difference that nobody else can offer them that.
No, I agree. And you know what? I guess better late than never.
Better late than never. Hey.
Better late
than never.
That's it. Look, congrats, LA Mongrel, on that victory. But in saying that, there's still more matches to go. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. So stay tuned for the next coming matches. I'm sure you and I or who else it is will be discussing, we'll be talking about it. So this is just the beginning. But thanks again for having me. I appreciate it very much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, look.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
All right, man.